I would like to give the word to W. Szabó Péter, who will talk in the same topic about.
Also about digitalization. Seemingly the microport works with a bit of an echo. I also love to have some sort of presentation. They say that in IT, after the 5th year you are in the business, the most important skill is PowerPoint. So that's why I always have a PowerPoint with me. Also, my memory is quite bad, so I'm like the little elephant. I learn really hard and I forget very easily. So this way I'm a bit more organized, hopefully. So in this talk, we will talk about, obviously, digitalization. And I have structured into 3 main topics, so to say. First of all, what is it, why it counts, and all the jazz at the beginning. Then, why do we talk about it now? What has changed? And this obviously leads to what the future holds for us, and how can you, as a person, company owner, employee, whatever you do, to have sort of an epic win moment in next year, which is closely tied to digitalization, I hope. And as a bonus, at the end I will tell you what I did this summer. Don't worry, it's not holiday pictures. I don't look that good in a swimsuit, so it's more about a very interesting startup which I started with a few very good people this summer. So that's why the topic. So the first thing, the definition, the best brief description of the digitalization project I have seen in Manila when you could still go there. And the brief description is basically this. So it's more or less a dungeon. You probably know what a dungeon is. You go in, very dark corridors, and there is lots of easy ways to get lost. There are traps, there are monsters, maybe even a dragon if you are into D&D. So long story short, it has a lot of pitfalls. And this is, I believe, what digitalization is in a nutshell. So you start to wonder, and you get hopelessly lost, because there are so many people telling you very different things, including myself here. So I'm just adding insult to the injury with this talk. But then again, this is what it is. You can't really capture, at least I couldn't. But if you have a good definition for it, I'm more than happy to hear it. But instead of a definition, I will tell you a story about digitalization and how it can be like a dungeon. And this is a real story about the biggest bank in Europe, HSBC. And I can talk about it because that was in 2014 when I was involved in a project for HSBC. And that project was more or less starting from a digitalization disaster. I still have the real user recording videos. I'm not sure if we will hear anything. There is probably no sound out, but probably you can see what the problem is. So this is a mortgage insurance project. What they wanted is to have an online way to have mortgage for your new home. So you know it's like a loan, but you guarantee with some sort of house or whatnot. So that's mortgage, and this is what they started. So for those people who went to HSBC's site at that time, so unfortunately they changed quite soon after, but at that time what you could see at the mortgage offers was home insurance and protecting your future. But most people, when they search for mortgage, they are in the mindset to buy a new house or something like that. And the most important thing they want to know is how much how can I get, and what are the rates, how can I repay, what are usually people expect some sort of calculator, like if I need £1 million for a house, then I need to pay back, I don't know, £1,000 a month for 30 years or something like that. The people expect this. Instead they find this, or there is another video where the person goes a bit further and they see a lot of stuff. There is even a calculator menu option which doesn't look at all like a calculator. It has some legal text and no calculator at all, which is quite odd. And this is a company which makes about 7,000 billion pounds a year in all assets, and this was the biggest bank at the time, and I still think it is in Europe. So long story short, the whole project was a disaster because pretty much no one could use it. And when when the internal project fails, they usually call external consultants. And at the time, I was I still do from time to time, but not as much as I did before. Was a user experience consultant, and when we were involved in the project, what they told us that, okay, this went a bit crazy, because they can see that people are coming from Google. Social media was not that big back then, but they were coming from Google. They were even paying for ads. They also run some campaign in newspapers. They burned a lot of money also to build the whole mortgage platform, and pretty much no one used it. Like literally 0.0 something% of the visitors reached to the point where they at least contacted the bank about it. So they were really puzzled. How is that possible? We threw a lot of money at the project and still nothing. And when I started to unravel things like, okay, but if you want a mortgage site, why does it start with something like home insurance and protecting your future? And then they told me, oh well, that's because you don't know the UK law. By the law you must have a home insurance in order to have a mortgage, and that's absolutely the first step, so you need to do that. And well, this is legally of course true, or at least was at the time, but the thing is, most people who went there also had no idea about the legal obligations banks have, and they fortunately didn't even care about it. All they wanted to know is how much they can get and what are the repayment terms. And of course, after some quite significant changes, the conversion rate of the whole mortgage user funnel, without saying too much lingo, sorry for that, but this basically means, if you don't know that, a lot and lot more people ended up using the site instead of going into the bank and talking with the clerks directly. So this was really beneficial. But what's really important to note here is that when you start doing any sort of digitalization, even if you're a small company or a huge bank, the first and I think most important thing is to try to change your perspective. You know a lot of things about businesses, about how things should work. You also have some internal people who are very, very knowledgeable in that specific domain, like the banking industry, but your users are not. And you want to sell, or at least convince them to come to your business or use your services or whatever. And then you need to change your perspective totally and try to listen to your users. And when you do, I would say miracles happens, because in digitalization, I believe that the biggest challenge is not the technology. We have the technology even today to build pretty much anything we can imagine. Sure, it evolves really fast, and in each year new frameworks emerge, and what was really widely used a few years ago, like jQuery. Now it's lagging behind, and now we have Angular and React and Vue.js and a lot of JavaScript framework, and there's just the front end. And then a lot of different things. New versions are coming out. You need to adapt, but overall, what we used to call rich internet applications, which is now just internet applications, is is pretty much something that most software developers could build for you. So it's not rocket science. The tools we have now enable us to realize whatever you wish. But in order to succeed, you need to wish what your users are looking for and kind of help them to ease them into that journey. Because by definition, all humans, including myself and I believe you as well, really hate change, really hate things which are totally new, which are totally outside of their comfort zone. And this is also a good example because for most people, especially in 2014, asking for a mortgage online, which means probably the biggest investment a person has in their life, especially in the United Kingdom where house prices are much higher. So this is a decision where you need to decide about the future of your family and also to take a loan from a bank which can be even millions of pounds. So in that context, it's a very stressful decision for pretty much anyone I can imagine. And then most people would go to a bank and talk to the clerk directly. But the problem is that this creates a huge overhead. You need a lot bigger staff, and also they are humans. They are fallible. They can give out wrong informations, especially with rapidly changing legislation, with new offers and all that. So just to put that in context, at a time when the mortgage clerk who were dealing with mortgage applications at HSBC branch was hired, in the first 2 weeks they didn't do any work at all. They just got a 2,000-page manual about mortgages in the UK at HSBC, and they had to learn that inside out and then do an exam from the content of that 2,000-page manual after the second week. And only if they passed, they started their real training in how to deal with clients and whatever HSBC policies were. So it was a kind of a nightmare for the employees as well. And that's what they hope to change with digitalization. And finally, this, as all good stories, has a happy end, because after half a year from this video, HSBC's mortgage application was, to say the least, usable, and some people even recommended it over other banks in the UK at that time. So it was successful at the end, but the road to that, the path was hindered with lots of traps and lots of sidetracks for them, and a lot of internal corporate politics. But that's not something you can change anyway. But that was in the past. Now, what do you think is the most important change when it comes to digitalization? Or in other words, what drives digitalization in this year? What has changed compared to the previous years? Or you probably know that a lot of companies went towards digitalization in the past few years, and including this year. What has changed? What do you think? What's the most important change we have seen? I wish, but no. That would be really good, but unfortunately user experience is still lacking for most online platforms, with very good exceptions, of course, but mostly this is not, unfortunately, not what drives the change, or at least how I see it. but that would be really nice. Thank you for the suggestion. Uh, yes, but smartphones, that's a very good answer, but smartphones are with us at least since 2007. And now we are in 2021, and although smartphones changed a bit, not fundamentally. Exactly. That's, I think, the most correct answer, and that's pretty much any expert online I could find. They say that pandemics, although they are a terrible thing, they always have sort of a good side, if you can call that a good side, is that they always bring socio-economical changes. If you think about even in the antiquity, if you think about the plague of Athens, which ended the Peloponnesian War and led to Sparta's victory over Athens, which no one thought it would be possible, with Athens' super power being a lot of an economical giant, lot of warships, lots of business interests over the Mediterranean, and suddenly they could lose the Peloponnesian War because of a plague. But if you think a bit further down, the Antonine plague led to the downfall of the Roman Empire with the end of Pax Romana. Or if you think a bit later, the plague of Justinian, which ended sort of the dominance of the Byzantine Empire in the east. Or, of course, as pictured, the Black Plague, which we all know that brought huge socio-economical changes across all Europe and pretty much replaced the whole nobility, because unfortunately they just died out, at least most of them. And we could continue with the Spanish flu, and of course now with our own pandemic, our own century, with the COVID-19, we experience a huge socio-economical change, which in our century, of course, and I would say, fortunately, doesn't lead to ceasefires, to end of wars, but it does lead to a digitalization at global scale, and not just any digitalization, but a digitalization process where remote works is not just an obscurity, some vague possibility at some very odd companies, but not the norm, but more and more big companies are hiring people to work permanently remotely, even after the plague. And just to name a few, Amazon for one, even in Romania, now they hire all their staff to work remotely, and they did so last year as well. And also a lot of other companies do the same, because this kind of makes sense. You never know if the fourth wave will be the last wave or what happens, but if you have the possibility, you let people work from home, not just because it's the law, but because it's the most logical thing to do. And it also shed light that even after the plague, we would have a possibility to work from home continuously, because even before that, the tools were there, but there was a reluctance for most business managements, because they thought that it's a lot harder to control people who work remotely. But now that it was required by the law in most countries, they just realized that, okay, with good project management, with good stuff, that's not really a big issue. If someone doesn't want to work, they will find a way not to work, even if they need to stay in the office 8 hours a day. And if someone wants to work, they can work even from the top of the mountain or next to the seaside or wherever they want. So this is one of the most important changes in the past 2 years. What do you think would be the other very important change, which is much more technological than social change when it comes to enabling digitalization? when you think about technology, what was a well, it wasn't really a technological breakthrough. So, sorry. Well, the cloud is an interesting thing, and it has part of it, but but cloud by itself is just something that now it's a very hyped term, but all in all, for the average person, it doesn't really matter if they are using the service provider is using the Amazon Cloud or Google or Microsoft Azure, or they are just using a random data center in Bucharest, something like the M24/7 data center. For most users, that's not a difference at all. But the cloud did enable something to be done much faster at a much bigger scale and much more money efficient way. And it's also something that is all over the place and now a buzzword in digital. Any idea? Yeah, big data led to it, but by itself is also something that doesn't do a thing to almost all users or most people, because big data just means that yeah, you can gather a lot of numbers about a lot of things, and you can store them and you can query them, and that's highly technical, but it doesn't change the life of 99% of Earth's population. That's for sure. Yes, that's the one. Thank you so much. And machine learning, although as a concept it was with us since the 60s and evolved and evolved and evolved, what really happened are two main things. First of all, it became much easier to do machine learning, thanks to great machine learning libraries such as PyTorch or TensorFlow, which enables pretty much anyone with I wouldn't say advanced, with I would say an average software development skills. You can do machine learnings, you can use your libraries, and you don't need to learn calculus, for instance, which was a solid requirement for machine learning in the past. You don't need to be a PhD in statistics. You don't need a lot of things which were necessary in the past for machine learning. You just do an online training or just learn how PyTorch works, and in a day or two you are running your own deep neural network, and you can also run them in the cloud, but also you can run them very fast in your own computer if it happens to have a dedicated GPU, like a more modern NVIDIA GPU with CUDA cores. You can, thanks to its parallelization, you can run your deep neural networks on those CUDA cores, and you would achieve really fast learning times with it, incomparable to what we had 5 years ago. So I think that's a huge leap. And what do you think is the third biggest thing which drives all the companies, even those who were really reluctant to do it in the past, and they don't really care about COVID, they don't really care or understand machine learning, they just, you know, happily living in their own bubble, and think about something like a farm or a... Yes, that's the one. Hopefully not this government, but some sort of government for sure will drive you towards digitalization, because laws and policies at government and local level will force you in that direction, even if you don't want to. Just because even if you are running an agricultural company and you have some fields and you just want to get some subsidies or submit some paperwork for a project or whatever, you will run into the necessity of having some sort of at least basic digital skills in your company somewhere, because you can't really just go with a lot of paper to government agency, because they will tell you that, okay, we are doing things differently now. We have the portal, you need to upload this and that, and if you are unable to do that, then it's a very sad story. And those three very sad stories leads to a necessity to digitalize for pretty much anyone. Unless you are living in a cave, you must do it, I would say. So it's no longer a novelty, but a minimum requirement for pretty much all businesses, I would say. But okay, if this is a requirement, how can you go beyond that? How can you win? I love the word epic win, because it kind of shows that you as a business owner or an employee at a business, you usually don't want to just lag behind and just follow the lead. Instead, you would want to be at the forefront. You want to be successful somehow, even if you don't own the business per se, but work with other people. You would be motivated to raise the ranks, to get higher responsibility, and of course, if you run the business, the profitability of the business depends on if you can go beyond. And I think there are three very important ingredients now. And as always with this, I would say bravery is the most important skill for all business owners, because if you, especially in digitalization, because in most businesses you reach a certain level and your competitors are pretty much at the same level roughly, especially when it's not a strictly digital business. But if you are brave, let's take the example of just having an agricultural company with a lot of fields, and I don't know, you are having some whatever weed or something there. And then if you are brave enough, you would have drones, you would have satellite imagery, you would have maybe self-driving tractors, which is a thing, by the way. It was a thing even before self-driving cars became widespread. And especially if you are in a business where you are having a production line of some sort, if you can automatize most of it, that's obviously a huge win, but it also a huge risk. And those people who take risks in order to have a higher reward, that's the common word bravery stands for. So I would say you need to be brave and invest in the future of yourself or your company. And if you lack the skills, it also takes a lot of bravery in order to say that it doesn't matter if I'm 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years old, I need to believe in myself that I can learn new things. Because at least to some degree, everyone needs to learn new things. And we can see that there are lots of elderly people, even in the 80 plus years age group. There are people who are on the Facebook, so they could at least learn Facebook. And most digital solutions are not vastly different, or mostly they are simple to learn and understand, or they should be simple to learn and understand than Facebook. Because Facebook has tons of features, you can do a lot of things, but for most people, that's something that they are willing to do because they can speak with a lot of strangers online, and they could be experts in virology and global politics overnight. So it's a very good thing to use Facebook. But it takes a certain amount of bravery in order to learn other stuff. The other thing which I love to quote Jacob Nielsen, the founder of Nielsen Norman Group, about user experience. If you want to give a 5-word or 6-word definition of user experience, he usually gives just shut up and listen to your users. Because if you don't do that, all the user experience research in the world will not help you. If you start thinking that you know better than your users, then you would create interfaces, you would create user journeys, you would create experiences, or force the UX people to create those experiences, which will hinder your users or outright make them leave your solution, leave your web shop, not use your application, and probably just go to the competition. So user experience is, I would say, definitely an ingredient, and I'm not just starting with it. And the third thing is kind of enabled by the previous two, is innovation. And innovation is something that most people tend to do in digital, is the opposite, is the follower mentality. They usually say, okay, let's see what the competition does. And if the competition does this, then maybe we should also do that. And if they don't do, well, why bother? And this will mean that at best you will be a few weeks behind your competition, but at worst you will be years behind your competition. But one thing is certain, you will never pass your competition. You will never be ahead of them, because you lack the will to innovate. This also needs bravery. This also needs listening to the users, listening to technology experts in different domains, and it also means taking a certain amount of risk, because innovation is never a straightforward path. But innovation can also come from other industries, other walks of life, pretty much anywhere. And most of the time, you just sit down, you kind of have an open eye, think about, okay, this is a nice idea. How can I make it work for the company, for the users, for the business? How can I make it work financially, and so forth? And because you, as a business owner or an employee of a company in a certain domain, you know the business itself. If you are in agriculture, you know how to grow plants and how to harvest them. That's a very good knowledge. But in order to innovate, you need to learn a bit about other areas and see what can you bring inside your domain, and from the merger of the two, some really innovative thing can come out. So innovation is not always things like, okay, you need to invent a totally new thing, like how the airplane was invented, or how the combustion engine was invented, or how the steam engine was invented. It's not always like a light bulb moment. We are not Edison, we are not inventors who would invent a light bulb or the telephone or whatever. Most of the time it's just reusing what worked for a different domain to our domain. So if you see that even a business model which worked for a different area, it could work for us. And I think the best example is the sharing economy. People started to see that, okay, things like Uber for cars instead of taxis, or let's say Airbnb for stay in a room instead of a hotel, and things like that. So they saw that this kind of sharing economy could work in one field, another, and the third. Maybe you can think about it and maybe somehow it could work in your field. It might not. I mean, in agriculture, we had the sharing economy way before Uber or Airbnb was a thing. It started in the late 40s in Romania, and we know how collective went, so probably you don't want to go into that direction, but you always need to have a judgment. And finally, because also the previous speaker talked about their business, I will also talk a bit about what did I do this summer. And this summer, starting from 2nd of June this year, I started a new startup from zero. And this is a stack, which meant that in 3 months I hired 31 full stack developers, which is quite a big number. Most people told me that, okay, but where do you find people? How can you hire in a year? The business plan was hiring 52 people in a year. How can you hire 52 people in a year? Because I tried hiring 3 developers since 3 years, and I still couldn't find good ones. And also they told me that, okay, this is a very uncertain time. You can't plan ahead for a month because the regulations are constantly changing. We don't know if there is Delta variant coming, 4th wave, 5th wave, what happens with COVID, how can you even think about something as stupid as starting a business in this year where everything is uncertain. And I kind of like to challenge those things, and I said, okay, I will do a business plan not for 3 months, I will do it for 2 years plus. And this is what I did, and then people said, okay, but this is stupid, where do you get the money? And I said, okay, well, let's just ask for funding, from investors. And I got funding from one of the biggest investment groups in Romania. So long story short, it was possible. And for this to be possible, I think the most important ingredient was that we had a vision. And there is a very famous quote from Antoine de Saint-Exupéry: if you want to build a ship, don't herd people together to collect wood, and don't assign them tasks and work, but rather teach them to long for the endless immensity of the sea. And I think this is the most important thing, to show people something that, okay, we have a vision. We don't want to be the 22nd outsourcing company in Târgu Mureș, and I believe that's a low number. Last time I checked, there were over 70-something IT companies in Mureș County, which are more than just 2 people in an apartment. So there are lots of IT companies in Târgu Mureș. I don't know the exact number from the top of my head, but it doesn't even matter, because I said, okay, let's forget this. We want to create outstanding experiences for tomorrow's user through creating a platform which uses machine learning to create customized experiences for all users. It's similar to assigning a user experience designer to each and every user, and create a platform out of this, which is a bit more than a content management system. And we need about 2 years to build it, and we need at least 2 million euros for it. And that's the starting point. And of course, when you have a goal, that's your goal, because you want to do stuff. But for your people, for those people who came to an interview to a stack, even before we even had a headquarter, now we have at the Kossuth Street at 84, but when we started, we had absolutely nothing, like literally nothing, no headquarter, just a big dream, and me saying that this will be nice, come to work with us. And of course, most people will just not do for your own dreams, because they also have their own dreams. So I told them a different, although very aligned thing. I told them, okay, I want to do this company in order to create the best workplace in IT in Mureș County by 2023. And this I still think as my biggest mission in all this stack, to make sure that this is the best place where you can work. And with this, I managed to convince all those people, saying that, okay, you will get the best gear, the best benefits. And by best gear, I mean that I always ask people, okay, what kind of laptop and monitor do you want? And most people either want a MacBook Pro or an Asus ROG or some sort of more expensive hardware, and I will always tell them, okay, that's good. And also we tried really hard to create the best office, and also give them the flexibility that, okay, we have this really nice office now in the Kossuth Street, but you can work from anywhere. It doesn't matter. If you want to come in, be my guest, but if you don't, that's fine. If you want to come in 2 days a week and work from home 3, that's also fine. If you want to work from a seaside resort in wherever you fancy, that's also fine, as long as you have a good internet connection there. And also we kind of created a very good atmosphere. We went to theater together, we even sponsored the play. We do a lot of things together. We have weekly game nights. We have a lot of just go together and let's have some drinks, and a lot of different things in between, just to make sure that this atmosphere is nice. And also the most flexible schedule, because for me it doesn't matter if you like working from midnight until I don't know, 12 noon next day. That's perfectly fine by me. If your wife is okay with that, who am I to tell you not to? And of course, if you need to take your kids to the school or take them out from the school or whatever after the school starts, that's also good. So make it as flexible as possible. And also when it comes to technology, I always tell people, okay, we need to use the latest technology, no legacy code at all, and this depends on the part of the project, but this usually means for the back end we use Python, because we not just myself, but most of the team believes in the supremacy of Python, and most other people not, but we don't care about them. I mean, if some people think that this is not for them, that's perfectly fine. I mean, we don't need to hire everyone in Mureș County. We need to just hire 52 people, and we are more than halfway over in 3 months, so we are doing good. And also in front end as well, in server-side technology as well. We even have a very good Amazon Web Services cloud architect from Scotland, very nice guy. So we said, okay, it doesn't matter where you live, where you work, and the technology, just try to use the most innovative ones, because imagine that we need to go live with this platform in 2 years. So if today we start with some technology from 3 years ago or 5 years ago, in 2 years time that will be legacy code. And most software developers were really overjoyed to hear this, because they really hated working on really antiquated technologies. We had employees who came from other companies who were working with tools like Borland Delphi, literally in 2021. So I was really puzzled, but you know, to each to his own. And also we created a system where promotions come really fast for those who are willing to go a bit beyond what we call the Call of Duty. So not the game, but the concept, as in there are some things which are required from you, but if you go beyond that, and in those 3 months I gave a pay raise to 7 people. So a good portion reached that. And truth to be told, there are many people who joined us with lower salary than what they had previously at other companies. I don't want to call the companies by name because it doesn't really matter. Because they saw the possibility, and they also heard from other employees that this is a fun place to work, and if you work hard, you can get promoted, and then you can get a larger salary and a lot of benefits, and it's not just a paycheck. And okay, this is now, but how we make absolutely sure that in 2023 we are absolutely the best company is that we said, okay, when the platform is launched, we will have 32 hours work week, which means that you can work 4 days a week, or you can work 5 days but then with lower hours. And this means that you will have more time for your family, for your hobbies, forever, for anything really, because I believe that in order to be a good software developer, you need to have good work-life balance. I can't imagine someone working 12 hours a day for a continuous period, not 2 days before the deadline of some project, but for like months, and still be productive during those 12 hours. I think that's humanly impossible. Maybe there are some special people who can do it, but I believe that's not a good idea. Not I wouldn't ask someone to do it. And also to make sure that no one is burning out, we also have a contract with a psychology company called the Noe Psycho Center, and they do an independent monitoring. And of course, I don't get any details of those sessions because that's highly confidential between an employee and the psychologist. But what I do get is a warning if someone is starting to show signs of stress, burnout, lots of different syndromes, because then we know that we are doing something wrong. Because if people are stressed out, if they are showing signs of burnout, then it means that we need to really speak with those people and also adjust work in order to avoid any sort of problems. And finally, which I'm also a big believer, and I also wrote a book revolving around that topic, is the Kaizen continuous improvement to create better user experience, to map better user experience. And it has many aspects which are listed there, but I don't want to rob most of the time. I think the most important thing is the root of it, which is accountability for all employees, because yes, they work on some things, and they might have some sort of vague sense of responsibility, but what they usually don't have at most companies, at least in IT, is a strict sense of accountability. So if you are working on something, you are also accountable for the success of that something. And I think this is also very important because from one side, they feel empowered. Even when they are junior or mid-level developers, they feel that they matter, their work matters, but also on their work, a lot of things kind of hinges. So they need to make sure that when they work, it's something they do with passion, but also to the best of their abilities. And this is certainly not for everyone, but it's something that received a very good feedback, both from the employees and also from the investors, because they can see that also we are making progress, their money is not wasted, and they also see that worst case scenario, we are building a very, very strong software development team in Târgu Mureș, and best case scenario, we will have the platform ready in less than 2 years, which at this stage seems likely in 1.5 years. So it means that everyone is happy. So I think that would be all of the presentation. And finally, I just have a Q&A with some random cat videos, because why not? So any questions if it's a Q&A? Oh, of course I am. I mean, I have to hire as many as possible. No, I don't have to spend it. I would be the happiest person if I could just pocket that and and be happy with it ever after. But unfortunately, that's not how it works. So I need to be very conservative with it. And I managed to hire a lot of people at a lower salary than what they got before because of the benefits and because of the word of mouth and whatever from big companies, including from Accenture and from other big companies, not just from small ones. So it's certainly possible. But yes, you're absolutely right. I'm very desperate to get the best possible developers in the shortest amount of time. And you know, in Romanian, there is a saying which you might have heard. It goes like "Domnia și prostia se plătește." Yes, yeah, my and this is something that I picked up. I didn't come up with the idea, but when I was senior manager at the Stars Group, the kind of the policy for all IT business units, including mine, was to hire 8 juniors for every 2 senior developers. And I think that's a very wise policy by itself because it means that you get those 8 people who will work, they will grow, they will learn new things, they have usually a passion to learn and evolve, and they are guided by the senior developers. But between you and me and between us, most senior developers are quite lazy by the time they reach seniority in their career. So the amount of work a senior developer does is mostly meetings, mostly guiding juniors, and if the juniors are stuck, at best they will sit down and help them directly. At worst, they do the work themselves. But I always prefer if they help the junior to do it instead of the senior doing himself. So I think of the senior developers in a more in a sense of a mentor and a coach for the juniors than actual 100% productive workforce. That's exactly what the investors, and rightly so, asked. Is how this will work in reality? Because at the time when we started, uh, the the headquarters in the Kossuth Street were just a construction yard. It was pretty much nothing there, just a few walls, but inside it was nothing. Now we reached a stage where you can go in, but that happened literally last week, where you at least I would say 95% done. At least now we have internet from and Wi-Fi and things like that, basic necessities. But early next week there was not even electricity in the building, so it was quite a rush thing to get it, because we also want a nice office. And so long story short, everyone was working remotely, and even so, there was a very easily observable curve of learning for most of those people. There were a few who were a bit slower to learn, but everyone, with some really minor exceptions, was willing to learn, and also they were willing to learn semi-independently, as in through online, through Teams, and also from online training sources, which we also did. And this seems to work, because now those people who joined us in June, they are now productive, and they are committing I would say acceptable quality code. So I would accepting that this is working, even if common knowledge says otherwise, that okay, you need to sit next to someone in order to train them, but seemingly this is also possible remotely. Well, to my knowledge, the user experience budget, and I might be wrong here because this is something that most companies don't directly disclose, but for most companies is way below 1%. So they spend very little on actual user experience, but that's perfectly fine, I would say, because uh, even if you spend very little, it usually has a very large return on investment. But if you start spending really high amounts, you will get diminishing returns from user experience. And to answer kind of your second question about the different user types, in user experience, you never aim to create a user experience which is good for all users. That's usually some mistake which many people fall into. But first of all, you conduct some research and you group them into what we call the personas. And for a company, so I never worked for Uber or Foodpanda. I worked for on a project for a company similar to Uber called Carhu. But anyhow, in those companies, you would have three main personas at least, and then you try to create a user journey for all three personas sort of independently, and then if there is no possibility to somehow merge them, you would try to create then one user journey which is acceptable for all of them. But even better, and that's why we have created a stack, would be if the user journey itself would change based on the user. But this is something that you can only do with machine learning, and there is a subfield of machine learning which is called the collaborative filtering, and which accidentally happens to be my PhD topic. But anyway, without going into the details, there is a way to customize user journeys based on what you learn about the users. And this is something that a lot of other companies do to a degree. One of the pioneers of using collaborative filtering to provide customized experiences was Netflix. But also it's widely used by Google, Facebook, and so forth, and Uber for sure. For Foodpanda, I didn't. I don't use Foodpanda, and maybe they have it. I can't say because I know very little about Foodpanda aside that they have those nice pink bags and they cycle around the city. But yes, in food delivery, it's also used by some companies. So yeah, it's possible to tailor the user experience to a degree. And now with A-Stack, we want to create a platform which goes even beyond that and fundamentally change the user interface, including for web applications, but also for Flutter applications, the whole look and feel, not just recommending, but also the arrangement and things like that. So it's certainly possible, and we are moving towards a world where you don't need to learn the application. Instead, the application will learn you and how you would like to use it, and it kind of reshape itself to your needs and expectations. And I think that's the future. Yeah, so the Kaizen UX. I published first in papers and taught about a lot, and I was giving conference talks. And in 2017, Pact Publishing published my book titled User Experience Mapping, where there are 2 chapters, especially giving the foundations of this Kaizen UX process, and then quite a few companies adapted it from what users do, which was then it was a startup that was I think the first adopter. It was having a very successful exit. UserZoom purchased the company, and now UserZoom also implemented it. But I was also giving training lectures at quite a few big companies, including Microsoft at the time. So at least they were interested, and I got very good feedback. And also in Romania, there are some companies who are using the Kaizen user experience framework. And of course, because it's an open framework, anyone can use it. I don't claim any copyright, and mostly because it's derived from a lot from agile methodologies, a lot from Scrum, and also from user experience best practices, my experience in managing UX teams, and also from the Kaizen continuous improvement principle, and also from small parts from the Japanese Kanban process. So it's kind of borrows from a lot of things. So it would even be unfair to say that it's all mine. It's just, I would say, a synthesis of many working parts, but it also works together as a sort of good. Initially I developed it specifically for user experience teams, because at that time there was no project management framework tailored to user experience teams. They were mostly kind of being part of Scrums, part of development teams, but as soon as user experience shifted from being a user experience person in a team into a whole team on its own, it required a management framework, and that's when I kind of invented one, but by learning from a lot of other things. So it's more like a summary of a lot of things. Any other question? If not, I'm also available for smoke talk after this, and we can discuss whatever you wish in private. And other than that, I'm really thankful for your attention, and thanks for coming.